Fishermen across South America are casting their nets into rivers that should be teeming with dozens of native species, a species that originated more than 8,000 kilometers away, on a completely different continent. In some of these waterways, 80% of native fish populations have vanished. Not through disease, not through poisoning, not through any visible catastrophe. No floating carcasses, no obvious cause. The fish responsible for this is sitting on dinner plates in millions of households right now, served at restaurants across the world. Considered one of the most efficient protein sources humanity has ever farmed. To understand why tilapia became this dominant, you need to go back to where it evolved. The Great Rift Valley of East Africa. This is not gentle habitat. Lakes in this region historically shrank, evaporated, and refilled in repeated cycles over geological time, forcing anything living in them to survive extreme conditions or disappear. Tilapia survived by developing biological tolerances that go far beyond what most freshwater fish can handle. Modern research shows tilapia can survive in dissolved oxygen concentrations as low as 0.3 milligrams per liter, a level that would kill 99% of commercially farmed fish species within hours. It tolerates water temperatures from 8 degrees Celsius up to 42 degrees Celsius, a range that covers conditions from near freezing to scalding. But its most significant evolutionary advantage is reproductive. Most fish release eggs into open water and leave their survival entirely to chance. Tilapia practices mouthbrooding. The female gathers fertilized eggs and newly hatched fry directly into her mouth, physically protecting them from predators until they're developed enough to survive independently. The result is an offspring survival rate that approaches near certainty compared to species that scatter eggs in hope. A single female can produce hundreds of offspring every 3 to 4 weeks. This is a fish engineered by millions of years of harsh selection pressure to survive almost anything and reproduce relentlessly when given the chance. The question was, what happens when you take that fish and deliberately introduce it somewhere it has no natural predators or competitors calibrated to its abilities? Tilapia first arrived in Brazil in 1950, introduced initially for a modest purpose, controlling algae and insect populations in industrial water reservoirs. The species' real opportunity came during the 1970s, when severe droughts hit northeastern Brazil. Inland fisheries collapsed under the water stress, and authorities faced a genuine food security crisis. The solution implemented was straightforward: release tilapia into large reservoirs as a cheap, fast-growing, low-maintenance protein source for affected communities. From a purely economic standpoint, the decision made complete sense. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization has nicknamed tilapia the aquatic chicken because of how efficiently it converts feed into edible protein under industrial farming conditions. Through the GIFT program, Genetically Improved Farmed Tilapia, a global selective breeding initiative, scientists developed strains that grow 85% faster than wild ancestral populations. The feed conversion ratio for tilapia is approximately 1.5 kilograms of plant-based feed per kilogram of fish meat, produced dramatically more efficient than cattle or pigs, which require far higher feed inputs for the same output. Brazil is now the 4th largest tilapia producer in the world, generating more than 860,000 tons annually. The global tilapia market is valued above $8 billion, with worldwide production exceeding 6 million tons per year. The United States alone imports tens of millions of dollars worth of Brazilian tilapia annually. By every standard economic metric, this has been one of the most successful aquaculture programs in modern agricultural history. The problem started where the farms ended. Tilapia farming in Brazil and across much of South America relies heavily on floating cage systems positioned directly in open reservoirs, lakes, and river systems, not sealed land-based facilities. Floods, storms, and structural failures in these cage systems have released tilapia into open water repeatedly over decades, in what researchers now describe as one of the largest uncontrolled aquatic species migrations in South American history. Once in open ecosystems, tilapia's evolutionary advantages stopped being a farming benefit and became an ecological weapon. It feeds on almost everything available in a river system: zooplankton, algae, aquatic vegetation, and critically, the eggs of native fish species. Male tilapia excavate large breeding pits in muddy riverbeds, a behavior that destroys aquatic plant cover disturbs sediment layers, and eliminates habitat structure that other species depend on for shelter and spawning. The cumulative effect in many major reservoirs. Tilapia now represents more than 80% of total fish biomass. Native species that evolved across millions of years in these specific river systems, including the Kuramat and Trara, are steadily disappearing. There's no direct predation event causing this. Native fish are simply being outcompeted and starved out of their own habitat. Unable to match tilapia's reproductive rate or its ability to consume virtually any available food source. Researchers have also documented hybrid vigor in some affected systems escaped farm tilapia interbreeding with existing wild tilapia populations, in some cases producing offspring with combined traits that compete even more effectively than either parent strain alone. Beyond direct competition with native fish, intensive tilapia farming density in open water cage systems has triggered a separate but compounding crisis: eutrophication. Fish waste and uneaten feed released continuously into open water introduce large quantities of nitrogen and phosphorus nutrients that, in excess, fuel explosive algae growth. Rivers and reservoirs affected by this process turn visibly green and thick with algal blooms. When those algae blooms eventually die off, their decomposition consumes dissolved oxygen from the surrounding water at a rate that creates dead zones, areas where oxygen levels drop too low to support most native aquatic life. This means the ecological damage from large-scale tilapia farming operates on two fronts simultaneously: the fish itself outcompeting native species directly, and the farming process degrading water quality across the broader ecosystem independent of the fish's direct predation. If this had stayed confined to freshwater systems, it would already be one of the more significant aquatic invasive species crises on record. But researchers have found that tilapia has gone further than that. If this is changing how you think about where your food actually comes from, share this video. Because what tilapia is doing right now breaks a rule biology textbooks have taught for generations. Standard biology draws a firm line between freshwater fish and saltwater fish. Cells in freshwater species are adapted to absorb water through osmosis. Placed in saltwater, those same cells lose water rapidly and shrink. Marine species function the opposite way, cross the line in either direction without specific adaptation, and the result is cellular damage severe enough to kill the animal. Tilapia has specialized gill structures and an unusually efficient osmotic regulation system that allows it to tolerate a far broader salinity range than the freshwater classification would suggest. Large schools of tilapia have been documented moving downstream into estuaries, mangrove systems, and coastal Atlantic waters along the Brazilian coastline from Maranhão in the north to Rio de Janeiro in the south. Researchers have confirmed tilapia tolerating salinity levels up to 35 parts per thousand full-strength seawater, the same concentration found in the open ocean. This matters far beyond the novelty of a freshwater fish surviving in saltwater. Mangroves and estuaries function as nurseries for entire marine ecosystems. Thousands of species of shrimp, crabs, and juvenile marine fish depend specifically on these brackish coastal zones to reproduce and develop before moving into open ocean habitats. Tilapia entering these nursery zones consume eggs and juvenile life stages of marine species, in the same way it has already consumed native freshwater fish eggs upstream. The threat is no longer confined to inland river systems. It now extends to the foundational nursery habitats of coastal marine food webs. Brazil's experience is not unique. Lake Nicaragua, the largest freshwater lake in Central America, has seen tilapia invasions significantly reduce native fish populations and damage traditional fishing economies that communities have depended on for generations. In Queensland, Australia, tilapia is officially classified as a dangerous pest species. Possessing or transporting tilapia alive or dead is a serious legal offense under Australian biosecurity law. Authorities there have resorted to using rotenone, a potent biological toxin, in infested waterways because conventional fishing and netting methods cannot keep pace with tilapia's reproductive output. In the southern United States, particularly Florida, tilapia has already become dominant in numerous inland waterway systems, following a pattern that mirrors what has occurred in Brazil's reservoirs. This is not a regional anomaly. It is a global pattern repeating across continents wherever tilapia had been introduced into open water systems without adequate containment. Eliminating tilapia entirely is not realistic. And given global protein demand, it may not even be desirable. With world population approaching 9 billion, efficient low-carbon protein sources remain genuinely necessary. And tilapia's feed conversion efficiency is part of why it has become so important to global food security. The fish is not behaving maliciously, it is doing exactly what millions of years of evolution shaped it to do. The responsibility lies in containment, and several technological approaches are currently being developed. Sterility biotechnology using CRISPR gene editing is producing super male and triploid tilapia populations that are biologically incapable of reproduction. If these fish escape farming operations, they survive only until the end of their individual lifespan, without establishing breeding populations in the wild directly addressing the escape and spread mechanism that caused the original crisis. The second major shift is toward closed aquaculture systems technologies like Recirculating Aquaculture Systems and Biofloc, which move farming operations onto land rather than into open floating cages. These systems recycle up to 99% of their water, using beneficial microorganisms to break down fish waste and convert it into usable protein-rich feed input, rather than releasing nutrients directly into open ecosystems. Combined with AI-driven monitoring and underwater sensor networks tracking oxygen levels and feeding requirements in real time, these systems essentially eliminate the escape and pollution pathways that created the current crisis. The primary obstacle is cost. Converting existing open cage operations to closed land-based systems requires substantial capital investment that many farming operations, particularly smaller ones, cannot currently absorb, but weighed against an 80% decline in native fish biomass across major river systems, and a species now breaching the freshwater saltwater barrier into coastal nursery habitats. The cost of inaction is compounding every year this transition is delayed. Tilapia crossed an ocean because humanity needed a fast, efficient answer to a food security crisis. It solved that problem. It is now creating a different one, in waters that were never built to handle a fish this relentless. The line between an efficient food solution and an ecological collapse in this case has turned out to be thinner than anyone expected when the first shipment arrived in 1950.